Hi there, and welcome to Real Lives with AngrySoccerMom. Each show spotlights real people who are passionate about supporting equality. Today I have Dixon White, who's an outspoken activist who supports equality for everybody. Thanks for being here.
Hi, Kim. How you doing?
Good.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Can you tell me briefly, where you grew up and, what it was like in America?
I grew up, I guess, in the 70s and 80s in a small town in Tennessee. I was taught racism, so I had a lot to overcome. And the crazy thing was I never really questioned my racism until much later on. But yeah, just a typical Southern white ignorant kid from Tennessee.
Was it that your parents were racist, or just the society and community and culture was just kind of...
All the white people around me were. Everybody used the N-word in my town. I mean, all the white people use the N-word, and my family certainly did use the N-word. They don't now.
How did you turn around? I mean, how did you...
Suffering a lot as a kid, I guess you could say, taught me empathy. And I began, after being bullied for so long and traumatized and abused, like a lot of activists, you hate bullies and you hate to see people bullied. And so I just developed a passion against bullies. And then I realized that white America is a big fucking bully. So I began to learn over time about race in America, and I studied it. And so what I've been doing is just asking white America to take some responsibility racially.
Can you pinpoint a turning point?
I was 19 years old. It was May. One day and one moment when it finally hit me, all the shit I've been through in life was simply because of prejudice and bigotry. And once I realized that is when everything changed for me, and I decided I'm never going to be a product of my environment. I'm never going to be programmed by, my environment. And I made a pact with myself in that one particular moment at 19 years old that I am going to fight prejudice and bigotry. And then later on, a few years later, I had a black roommate, and he kind of took me under his wing, and he taught me about, and I witnessed the racism that he endured. And so it just kind of became a thing with me to teach white America about race, and to try to help white America to overcome our white supremacist nature. And when I say white supremacy, I'm not talking about neo-Nazis or your typical white supremacists. I'm talking about your everyday American who has consciously or unconsciously bought into the lies and the myths of white supremacy, or they're defensive about it, or they're fragile about it, and so or they're silent about injustice racially. And so what happens is they wind up perpetuating the problem because of their denial, because of their silence, because of their delusion racially, and because of their privilege. And it keeps going. So white America has a very, very, very long ways to go. White people have to start teaching other white people the truth. There's a cost to us white people for living this lie, and the cost is, number one, people of color will never trust us. Soon we're going to be the minority. So we need to have some credibility. So when you try to live this lie of superiority, it's gonna blow up in your face.
Yeah.
People think they're helping their cause by being greedy and having white privilege, and really they're destroying their lives, because people of color know that the majority of white people are racist in some way, and if they're not racist, they're denying it, they're remaining silent, they're apathetic, they don't care.
Yeah, I think a lot of
apathy and that silence and that denial is the biggest problem that we have with racially with white people. When I was real young, my grandmother passed away. I failed out of college because I had clinical depression. Went home. I worked in a factory, and I got this factory job. And at lunch, we had one black guy in the whole entire factory out of 50 people in the factory. All of them were white. One black guy, and he would come in, eat lunch. People would be pleasant to him, but then when he would walk out, 4 or 5 of the guys would start making racist jokes about black people, saying the N-word and all that. And I remember that oath I took with myself and with God when I was 19. And I sat there the first day, and I was so intimidated. I was only 22, 21, not over 21. And these guys were 40s, 50s, and they were these were mean, rough guys. You know, these were not like
probably.
These were intimidating men, and I was scared. I was intimidated. I went home and I thought about it, and I said, I gotta say something. So the next day, same thing happened. They started making, racist jokes about black people as soon as he left, calling him the N-word. And I just lost it in the lunchroom. And I literally stood up, and I told every one of those guys off. I called them racist, made a huge scene. One of them wanted to fight me. And luckily, one of the guys, I knew him from school. He was so mad at me for calling him a racist and everything and cussing him out. And he said, if you make me lose my job, you're going to find some buckshot in your ass. And so I'd say, you'll find buckshot in your ass. And I could imitate him perfectly. And so every time he'd say something to me, I would imitate him and mock him.
Oh, you actually did that at the place?
Yeah, I did that. He would get so mad. He'd just turn blood red in the face, but the whole room would laugh their ass off. So I just would make fun of him every time he'd mock me. But yeah, he would threaten to shoot me, and other people threatened to shoot me. Long story, but I finally got fired from that job for standing up. They fired me, and it was an important job. And then, and then I had a black roommate, and I watched him go through hell in Savannah, Georgia, just as a black person, a black student in Savannah, Georgia, being harassed by the police. And he actually went to jail twice.
By the police?
Number one, because of a racist landlord who lied on him because he didn't want a black guy in his apartment complex. He lied and said Roy assaulted him. He did not. There was witnesses. He got off. His sister's a lawyer. Then he got arrested for stealing his own car. And then just walking down the street, the cops would stop him, harass him, frisk him, question him. And you see this on a weekly basis happening to my friend. And it's not happening to me. And I began to see the reality, Yeah. White supremacy is real. Black people endure a lot of shit. They're not talking out their ass. They're telling you the truth. And white people have never cared. So when will white people begin to care? It's time after 500 years that we begin to fucking care. When will we stop the bullying? When will we stop the system? When will we stop the apathy, the denial, the delusion of white privilege that we live in?
Right.
We were founded on the idea of justice and freedom for all, but it's justice and freedom for whites. And it's always been that way. Our nation was founded on two things, primarily, in my opinion, the enslavement of Africans and the genocide of indigenous people. That's the real founding of this nation. And that's the thing that they don't tell you in the school system. And then, of course, having a black president for the first time, and then all the white lash during his presidency, all the hate that he received, all the racism, the rampant racism, because we had our first black president in a white racist nation. So then, of course, we had a reaction after our black president.
Backlash,
white lash or backlash. They installed the most racist white supremacist that they could find as president. And that is why we have a white supremacist president now, is simply because we had our first black president. Historically, white America has always reacted with a white lash after anything happens positive for black folks. His mission is white supremacy for the institution, for the system. He's a vile human being, and I hate the man. Kim, we have an openly racist president in our nation. Think about that.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And nobody has done anything to address it, to actually remove him from office. Why? Why do we have an openly racist president in office on a daily basis that commits acts of racism, that states racist, comments toward the general public, toward people of color, toward immigrants, toward whoever, and it's tolerated? And the only reason it's tolerated is because that's truly who we are as a nation. That's a huge start. Just teach them the truth about what white people have done and what we are doing. And then teach anti-racist values, because you live in a racist society. So we're all indoctrinated, everybody indoctrinated by the values, the principles of white supremacy. So why don't we have something in school in place to combat that disease? And be honest with you, the only qualification that Trump needed was to be racist. It didn't matter how sick he was mentally, psychologically, how incompetent he was, how unstable he was, the thousands of scandals that he had. All that really mattered was that he is a bona fide white supremacist. And that is the only reason he got elected. Only one qualification he needed in America, KKK.
It wasn't despite his racism, it was because of it.
There's only one reason why he's in place. He's a racist. He was an open racist during his campaign, and all the white nationalists and white America, after a black president, adored him. Make America great again. We all know that meant white again. Everybody knows that. He knew it when he made the slogan. His people knew it. Mm-hmm. When we had a black president, everybody was elected. All the white people started screaming, "Post-racial America, post-racial America." That was so far from the truth. White people care about everything, you know. The LGBT community's made progress. Women have made progress. There's been all these great movements. Mm-hmm. Gun control is making some progress. There's been all these great movements by white people, but we've yet to ever see a genuine movement by white people against racial injustice. And I don't know that we ever will. That's the one thing that white people run from. That's the one thing that white people will not really come together about. because we're so ingrained with white supremacist ideals. That's who we are. And it's really, really sad. But, you know, as far as police brutality, the culture has to change. White people have to change their culture because laws won't change until the culture changes, most likely.
Our values, kind of, like what we value.
Yeah, because a policeman can kill anybody they want, especially people of color, with complete and utter immunity. The laws are designed to protect the cops' racism and protect their brutality. So until culture changes, most likely the laws won't change. So I understand why there's a few black people that never trust me. And I understand that. Look at our reputation.
Recently, the NFL owners have, the white NFL owners have gotten together and decided that people like Kaepernick and people who have, you know, respectfully, nonviolently knelt down, kneeled down, you know, during the anthem, because the anthem is a racist, you know, one of the verses that isn't sung is racist, and it was written by a man who was pro-slavery and owned slaves. You know, do you have an opinion on that? Because, I mean, people are really enraged, and as they should be.
Well, I mean, it's a sad state of affairs, you know, that their First Amendment rights are not being honored. They should have a right to protest racial injustice by simply taking a kneel. You know what I mean? Especially as a person of color, you should have that right. That they've earned that right, living in this racist nation. But
to take that away,
yeah, it's just I don't know. It's just very frustrating, and it's really a dark time, in my opinion, in this nation, and it's been that way for a long time. But there's so many things happening that's so, you know, negative and ugly and just disgusting to me.
To me, it was kind of like a scenario like the white masters telling I hate to say it, but telling the person who kind of owns them, because they have the power, that no, you'll do what I say. There's injustice, you're going to shut up about it and take it.
Yeah, and the truth is, if it was white people protesting anything, you know, but it's black people protesting racial injustice. But if it was, let's say, white football players protesting abortion or protesting, you know, it would probably be tolerated a whole hell of a lot better. The fact that it's black people standing up for racial injustice, that's the one thing that white America has never, ever, ever been able to accept. I mean, they could be protesting gun violence. Nobody would care. You know what I mean? They could be protesting abortion. Nobody would care. We've never, ever came together as a genuine movement. White America's come together for so many other great movements, like the Me Too movement recently. Look at how white America jumped on board. Look at gun control. Look how the teenagers and everybody jumped on board. But you talk about white racial responsibility, and they're like, what the hell?
What's that?
Everybody's like, what? What are you talking about? Oh my God. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Even
not to stereotype white people, but I'm just saying, you know.
No, even when it comes to some of those issues,
yep,
a really hard pill to swallow. But we can talk about it, but we have our brothers and sisters of color are living it every single day, and they cannot just decide not to be an activist or decide not to be, I want a break. And that's
and then when they talk about it, nobody wants to hear them.
That's enraging to me.
People like us can talk about it and we can get heard. That's not right either.
It's ridiculous.
But I do it because it's necessary. But I haven't said anything original. You know what I mean? I haven't said one word original. I haven't said anything that black people have been saying for 400 to 500 years.
Yep.
Not one thing.
People, you know what? A lot of white people, when they talk to me, they say, well, your ideas are, I'm like, they're not my ideas. They're the truth. They're what everyone's been saying, and you haven't been listening.
People have been saying for centuries. Yeah.
They've been, it's a disease. You're right. It is truly a disease. Is there anything that you wanted to add that we haven't talked about? I mean,
no, I always tell white people to do three things: to acknowledge the system and culture of white supremacy, to take action against it, and to educate each other about it. Three things. That's it. Acknowledge, act, educate.
Change is going to come from the bottom up with people caring. And white people aren't saviors. Not a chance. People of color are going to save themselves because they are. They are. But God forbid the actual oppressors maybe jump in a little bit and give a shit.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't do this just for people of color. I do it for everybody. I do it for white people too.
Absolutely.
Because there's a huge cost to us, to white folks, to live in this lie. You know?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's sick and a lot of like psychological subconscious stuff. But I always tell people, you walk by as if it's not there, a person of color, after all the redlining and the systemic racism and just everything that's added up that our nation has done to them because of, the status that we've forced them into as a nation. You walk by them as if just the way it is. And no, we made this up. White people made this up. It doesn't have to be the way it is. I say, would you walk by a person who is slowly drowning because you didn't build the pool or you didn't shove them in? Or then why do you ignore our fellow humans who, in a country that, this is what kills me, in a country that boasts liberty and justice for all, yet it's bullshit. It's kind of like, I told somebody the other day, it's like money is a human construct. If we all in America said, you know what, this is a piece of paper, not a dollar bill, and the system of our monetary system, if everybody here said, you know what, we're not doing this anymore. We're not going to hold ourselves to this greatness that is a false, made-up construct. It would collapse. So clearly, kind of like what's going on. But I am very, very happy that we were able to have this discussion, and thanks for being here. And there's a lot going on I can't even keep up with. It's a lot. Please support my attempt to educate white America by subscribing to my Angry Soccer Mom YouTube channel. Thank you.